What's up? So today, going to give you a little rundown on some things I got going on. I've currently got I've set up AI to talk through my Telegram. I am able to operate CAD software through my Telegram. So basically using text prompts to create three-dimensional objects. So that's something we'll run through a little later. I have got all three of my computers now lined up to basically where I can text it through my phone, and it's amplified my work by several capacities. Like I'm consistently working from eyes open to eyes going to sleep. So we'll walk through that a little bit later, and then I've also got One Life Left app. It is pretty much complete. It is going into the Play Store, so I'm gonna give you guys a preview of that. But first off, I got my good friend Dr. Fisher back with me. Welcome, Dr. Fisher.
Thank you for me being here again.
Yes, sir. He's got some stuff he wanted to. So last podcast we talked about, we had a discussion with Claude, and we were talking about basically sentience, AI being sentient, and we got into what thought is. And Dr. Fisher wanted to talk a little bit deeper about what actual thought is. So I'll kick it to you, Dr. Fisher. We kind of define where thought comes from through the neural pathways and everything like that. What's your thoughts on thought?
Well, my thoughts and my thinking with thoughts, intentionally being redundant,
Yeah.
is that the question, what is a thought, is maybe the most important question we humans are overtly and covertly wondering with.
Yeah.
And cognitive science appears to me to be a science that directly or indirectly is trying to answer that question.
Yeah.
But it is limited, that science is limited by a specific philosophy of science. But given all of that, what interested me was in that last podcast that you just alluded to, you brought up the question. You asked the question, what is thought?
Right.
And I gave, at that time, my analytical answer to that.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been reflecting on your question and my answer. Hence, I solicited your interest in coming back and revisiting
Right. I'm happy to have you.
again that question.
Yeah. Always happy to have you.
All right. Well, then let me kick it off
Okay.
by asking you, Rob, what is your thinking? Notice I'm linking thinking and verb with the word thought, a noun, in my talk. What is your thinking? That's your activity.
Right.
About thought.
So this is something that I have dwelled on at length in my own time now, since before even our last discussion, because it's something that I've always pondered. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where do these voices that I hear? Not voices. I don't want to sound insane.
That's all right. I understand. You're talking to yourself.
Yeah. Where does this process of coming up with ideas, this process of identifying tasks that need completed, where do these thoughts come from? And for me, I don't have a good answer for that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My core belief in the matter, I can't definitively define where it comes from, but my thought
Yes.
is you have past experiences that build basically neural pathways in your brain, and whenever you have some task or something that you need to complete, if your brain is like a processor, if you want to, the opposite of personifying it, computerize it, I guess you'd say, comparing it to a computer. If your brain is like a processor and your neural pathways are like your memory, then you're somewhere in your brain, and I have no idea how, somewhere in your brain, you analyze your past experiences to come up with some concept, and then that concept is translated to your physical being through your mental images or whatever. That kind of be like the best way I could think about it.
Well, I understand that and understand the dilemma.
Yeah.
I've been there and done that myself.
Right.
And have worked it out sufficiently well that I'm ready, willing, and able to do what I'm doing with you now with it.
Nice.
With the question, what is a thought?
Yeah.
And to allude to, and why I ask you the question is quite frankly, to get you talking.
Yeah.
Because you're going to use word meanings in your talking.
Yeah.
And then I can select some words from what you just said.
Right.
And the word that I'm going to select on that is voices.
Right.
Where you're apologetic, you're hearing voices. Because there is some kind of a psychological symptom of some kind of mental health problem if somebody says, I hear voices.
Right.
Well, I want to pick on that.
Yeah.
Because I infer that humans, especially humans, not dogs or Jack, or other beings, but humans do hear and see metaphorically voices. And if you ask, where are these voices that you hear? And you say, and then the typical way to answer that is you point here.
Right.
Up. All right, not out there, but in here. So voices implies talking. And talking implies using meanings of words, does it not?
Yeah.
So when you're talking, you're talking to yourself.
Right.
You're hearing yourself talk to yourself.
Right.
Now, do you infer that that's a general thing that humans do?
It's funny that you asked that specific question.
Yes.
Because there recently was a study released, and I heard about this secondhand through a podcast, and I just pulled it up here. Approximately 50 to 75% of people experience inner voices or internal monologue. There's actually, you might not have been aware of this, there's actually a percentage of people that don't have that inner voice, and they don't, so I don't know how their thought process works. Maybe it is they're not, I think I'll use this example to kind of illustrate what my thought is on this. My vision has changed very subtly over the years, and I remember I went to the eye doctor to get new prescriptions for glasses, and I told him my left eye feels a little blurry, and he was like, it's literally fractionally different, and the fact that you are able to actually perceive that difference shows how conscious you are of your how your eyes are working. So I think all people have the capacity to have this inner dialogue, have these thoughts in their mind, but I from what I've read and what I've heard from podcasts, not everybody actually has that inner dialogue. So that's something interesting to think about.
Well, it is interesting to think about, and also to think about the fact that a scientific study has been made on that question.
Right.
And then reporting the results of that scientific study of what they, in that study, found.
Yeah.
What it becomes in scientific studies about these inner states that we're talking about in the human being, though, they have to operationally define what they mean by inner speech.
Right.
And their definition then of what that is then includes and excludes what they find.
Right.
So they find what they're looking for. And if they define out what certain things, so I don't know that particular study, that particular scientific, it'd be a social scientific research.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, here, we'll pull it up.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can remember how to do this. All right, so we got that, and then I can go here. There we go. So this is an article about it, how inner monologues work and who has them, and it cited the study a little lower. Hubert R.T. Alderson, but anyhow, this was actually done in 2016, so this isn't new science. This is actually old. They found 5 to 10% of people that they did this study on, and I assume it's actually a survey type study, because it's not like you can actually cut somebody's head open and see.
No, it's a survey, and they ask people, do you hear it or don't you hear it?
Yeah.
And people answer according to how they answer it. And then the guy writes a piece of paper and puts a mark down and does math on it and publishes it.
Yeah, so that 5 to 10% might not necessarily not have that inner voice. They might just not be aware enough to actually have the conversation with the inner voice.
Exactly. It may be. It might be.
Right.
You know, and that's potentially, probably.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I like to pick on those things. And I picked on that a little bit, and I thank you for putting it on the screen there.
Yeah.
That's a handy thing to be able to do. I wish I could do it, but I'm not going to practice that art myself.
I'm still new to this too. I actually had the computer screen over your face there for a second.
Yeah.
I'm learning as I go.
Well, that's the point. That's the point that we'll keep recycling back to. But now then, rather than cite scientific studies on this matter of what a thought is, would you be willing just for you to dialogue with me?
100%.
And then you use your own, I say, now I'm going to use 2 words here, perception and conception.
Okay.
I've noticed that you're handy with the word perception.
Yeah.
Conception comes up a little bit, but perception comes in more than.
Yeah.
Now then, I'm inferring that. What do you mean by perception?
Perception for me is your ability to identify traits or trends or things in your environment or changes, subtle things or not subtle things, because perception is essentially your ability to I never really thought of it, to be honest with you.
Well, I understand.
I'm trying to define it real time.
You are, and if you're willing to do that, I bless that a lot.
Yeah.
Because that attempt to me is more important than that study.
Yeah.
For my purpose.
Yeah.
See a man struggle with this.
Yeah. I'm never ashamed to fail.
Yes.
So.
Well, thank you. I'm not either. I'll spill the beans on myself about almost anything.
Yeah, me too. I'll struggle. I'll struggle all day. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Well, to relieve you a little bit of the answer to that question, let me ask you this, because I want to get to the idea of what a thought is through these sets of questions.
Right.
Going through perception and conception.
Okay.
Which I infer that you and I can agree on, that those 2 words refer to some kind of human experience.
Right. Yeah.
2 different kinds, but interrelated.
Yeah.
All right, we can agree on that.
Yeah.
All right, now then, what is the experience of perception? That's the object question. What is the object of the perception? But what is the object of conception? Okay. Those are accepting both of those as experiences, but they both have different. I'm going to use the word objects here.
Yeah.
For this purpose, objects to perceive, be perceived, and objects to be conceived.
Right.
So we're going to the object of the experience, not the experience itself.
Okay. So
can you do anything with that?
Yeah, I'm struggling with the difference, between conception and perception. So perception is how we, for me, it's always been, it doesn't necessarily have to be your environment. It can be, literally actions and things that happen and how you react to it, or how you, your perception is how you understand whatever it is that's going on.
Okay.
Conception, like I've never really conceived what conception might even be.
Yeah.
So I've never really thought to think of the definition or defining of words like that. You're the first person ever to introduce me to that.
Okay. Well, do you mind if we continue
let's go.
Introduction?
100%.
All right, with that's what you've just said then, let me pick on the meaning of the word perception.
Okay.
Now notice, as an analytical philosopher, I more than often, before I'll use the phrase meaning of the word
Right.
rather than just say word,
Yeah.
but meaning of the word.
Right.
All right. Well, with that said, then, the meaning of the word perception, as it refers to some kind of a human experience.
Yeah.
That's the first stage in defining what it is.
Okay.
Then with the second stage is to defining what is it that exists. I'm going to use the word exists instead of object this time. What is it that exists that is perceived?
Right.
And then now we go to examples. I'll go to, not pushing buttons on a machine, but using my finger to point at things. And then ask you, and we'll go back to this infamous table here.
Right. Yeah. The table. I love the table.
Come on back to the table. All right. And then point at it and say, would you say that this object, this kind of existence is a physical existence?
Yeah. I mean, from my perception of.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. From your perception, you're going to the object perceived.
From my perspective, I should say.
Well, that's another way of doing that, and there's circles we can get into, and they'll spiral.
Right.
All right. With that said, then you've alluded to the answer already. Then are physical things like this table, and I think we use this metal here.
Yeah.
And even Jack.
Yeah.
As an organic physical thing, because you pointed out. Remember last time when I pointed at the table?
Right.
You pointed out it once was organic.
It once was, yeah.
And she made a good distinction there, from my point of view. All right. So, but physical things, whether organic or inorganic, would you say that the meaning of the word perception is a word that names the human experience of physical things?
Yeah, you defined it pretty well.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. You mean today?
Today, yeah.
All right. Well, but also the other day.
Yeah.
I did appeal to the science I know about how in the science I know, which pretty much analytical philosophy is, that the perception of physical things can be divided into, can be referred to as extraception.
Right.
And then we defined extraception, as it was in that study, by seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting.
Yeah.
Physical things. All right. Well, so with all of that, then with this talk, then extraception is one kind of perception.
Right.
And they're both human experiences. But the extrospection is a kind of experience that is reduced to seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting physical things.
Right.
Following that scientific study out, these are biochemistry studies. They're hard sciences compared to the soft science. They're using a hard and soft distinction. The hard science of this is that it also, though, includes, as a matter of perceptive experience, what is referred to as interoception.
Interoception, okay.
And the meaning of the word interoception in this biochemistry study is what is it that exists that is interocepted is your body feelings of pain and pleasure.
Right.
And I think you added hunger.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, I think so.
And I can add, the sexual urge.
Right.
That's not an unimportant kind of physiological existence.
Right.
Okay, well, why I'm bringing this all up is because exteroception is a form of perception.
Okay.
Interoception is a form of perception.
Okay.
And then the third one is proprioception,
Right.
which is, as we mentioned, the human experience of human body balance,
Mm-hmm.
body balancing,
Yeah.
and getting out of balance.
Right.
Which I think the example was you getting out of your
The cold plunge.
cold
Mhm.
environment,
Yeah.
water environment,
Right.
and coming out onto the stable ground,
Right.
floor
Mhm.
and shivering.
Yeah.
All right, well, that shivering isn't a sign of imbalance.
Yeah.
It's a shivering of the effect of the water on your skin.
Yeah.
But if it made your body out of balance and like that, then you would be in proprioception.
Okay.
So I'm making distinctions that I know from biochemistry.
So kind of like, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before. It was the weekend before. I had played golf like every day
Yes.
for a week, and I was in the sun. Got
Yes.
really hot. I got dehydrated,
Yes,
and I actually nearly fainted
yes,
one day.
yes.
So that, and I felt like my skin buzzed warm, and I could feel like a lightheadedness and a wee, in my ear.
Yes,
And that ear ringing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm about to pass out." That would
Yes.
be, what's the word?
the balancing thing.
Proprioception.
Yes,
Because my body's out of balance.
out of balance.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So I'm tracking
yeah. That's the body.
proprioception. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other was extro. That means
Physical,
external to
external
the
to the
body
body.
out here, organic and inorganic.
So you're dancing around to interoception being around where thought is
No.
hosted. Oh, okay.
Well, I'm getting two thoughts.
Yeah.
But first, I'm just making. We're going to get to thoughts through the meaning of the word conception.
Gotcha. Okay.
Those are related.
Those are all. You were just saying all those three elements were all elements of perception.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
sir. That's exactly right.
Gotcha.
And they also then are also related to the brain and the nerves
Right.
of the human body.
Right.
Hence, they are all human body experiences.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes. And the human body experience of, for example, interoception of pain,
Mm-hmm.
the pain itself exists,
Right.
but the pain itself does not exist physically.
Right.
The word that we use for that is physiologically.
Yeah. There are folks that don't have pain, experience pain, right? Like it's a weird genetic thing. I'm not sure what that's called. Not to derail you, but
No, that's fine. Anything you say ain't going to derail me.
let me see what that's called.
Yeah, do that. Do your thing.
But I didn't mean. Where were you going with that? I'm sorry.
Well, where I'm going with that is that I'm making a distinction between physical existence and physiological
Right.
existence.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Congenital. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't read.
Congenital insensitivity to pain.
Yeah. So I thought there was an actual disease name for this,
There might be.
but I'm not finding it.
Well, but this would be a more or less quote unquote hard science.
Yeah.
Where they actually figure a way to study the human body without getting people just to report what the
Right.
body's doing.
Yeah, they call it CIP. They say various case studies have demonstrated how specific genetic mutations have led to CIP. Basically, they tested by using voltage,
Yes.
gated sodium channels. They were sitting there electrocuting people.
Well, see, there is degrees of humor in it,
Yeah.
and there's more than humor. And if we ever get there, maybe not today, but there's tragedy in this kind of thing
Yeah.
that I want to get to in due time. Probably not today.
Yeah.
Okay, but to remain on track, that the question that I'm started with is what is thought.
Right.
But I got off and have gone off into the use of the words perception and conception.
Right.
and then said we're going to get to conception later when we get to what is a thought.
Right.
But to get a lot of kinds of human experiences of what exists sorted out in our discussion
Right.
before we get to that. And part of the sorting has to do with what the brain neural system does, which is exteriospect.
Yeah.
Spect means look at.
Right.
Interospect, look inside and find pain and pleasure and hunger and sexual urges.
Right.
And propriospect, and there humans experience body balance
Right.
and imbalance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that takes care of the biochemistry kind of science that's involved in what I'm using.
Right.
And then with that distinction between physical existence and physiological existence, where physical existence by definition is what exists that you can see, hear, smell, touch, or taste.
Mm-hmm.
And physiological existence can be either the kind that's introspected, like body pain and pleasure and sexual urges and hunger,
Yeah.
and proprio, body balance. Those are all inside the body using the inside-outside discernment.
Right.
So, with that said, now becomes the more philosophical part. And the philosophical part is raised with the question about what is commonly known as a discernment between our duality of what physically exists and what mentally exists.
Okay.
That old distinction between physical and mental,
Right.
which I'm dragging in now to get still within perception.
Right.
Okay? So how do you make the distinction between mental existence and its experience and physical existence and physiology? See, we got to build up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually made me think a little bit about. I'm off center again. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
With
All right. Well, good thing
There we go.
you're a man of detail here. That's
Sorry. That bugs me for some reason.
Yes.
I hate to see it in post after I'm done.
well, I'm glad you're bugged because hell, I'd have it all over the joint here.
Well, it's funny that you say that. This whole thing has got me thinking about different things that I've never considered before.
Yes.
So, as far as restate the question one more time. That messed me up.
Well, that's good. All right. So before I rephrase the question, do you mind if I briefly review again what we just did? Because we've made discernments between meanings of words and what they refer to as to what exists.
Yeah.
All right. And we're still within the broad categories of perception and conception.
Right.
But we're right now inside the meaning of the word perception.
Yep.
And then inside the word perception, what exists.
Interoception,
and what exists are
exteroception,
physical things that are exterior, seen here, and internal physiological exists, pain and pleasure, along with proprietary experiences of body balance.
Right.
That's all perception. All right, and then those the basic distinction about what exists is the existence of physical things and physiological things. And then the question, now where does mental fit in?
Yeah. So, okay, that reprompted where my thought was.
Yes.
So, all right. So, interoception, that's basically the way you perceive things going on within your body.
Specific things, though.
Yeah. Exteroception.
Not body balance.
Yeah, that's the other one. Proprioception.
Yes.
Yeah, proprioception. And then the exteroception is things that we interact with in the world, right?
Physical.
Like physical.
Everything's in the world.
Physical things.
Yeah,
well, are thoughts necessarily in the world, though?
Well, see, you're getting back on the thoughts, and we're going to deal with that.
You said everything.
Huh?
You said everything.
Where was I using the word everything?
Everything exists in the world. Do thoughts exist in the world?
In the world is the phrase
the physical
that we
portion
want to work
is
with.
what we're referring to. Yeah. but yeah, so the thought that crossed my mind that kind of is actually is like a kind of like an aha moment, not really aha moment, because we talked about dimensions in the past as well. You know, you've got 1 dimension is just a flat surface. 2 dimensions is like a basically, you know, a flat surface with multiple points on the surface. 3 dimensions is actually where you can actually, you know, locate within a 3-dimensional sphere. I'm not explaining it very well.
Well, you're doing the best you can, but are we talking about physical things?
Yeah,
or physiological things?
This is physical things.
Physical things.
And then the fourth dimension would be time, right? So those are the 4 dimensions. And then when you start getting further into dimensions, then there's a reason why I'm going down this rabbit hole. When you start getting further into those dimensions, and I discussed this at length. I don't know if we did it together or if I did it on my own. But I discussed at length with AI where after you get the 5th, 6th, 7th dimensions, what those actually mean. And AI was telling me, and you know, in the conversation I had with the AI, it was saying that those extra dimensions are actually different timelines of humanity. And I was like, man, that seems kind of self-centered to think that another dimension would mean that it's just because I decided to sleep in today versus getting up out of bed and going to play golf. And I say all that to say it could even potentially be that the 5th dimension is where thought resides, where that actual interaction with you know, your neural pathways come up with like those that internal voice or those and that's probably off base, but it's just if you're defining,
they're appropriate in my analytical philosophy. You're using metaphors a lot,
all right,
and you're using the words time, space, and time. So you've introduced two important meanings of words,
right?
Space and time into this, but that's appropriate.
When you're discussing physical objects, I always think of dimensions because the table has physical dimensions in a space. It doesn't move, otherwise it would need time dimensions. But I guess you could say when it was manufactured at that time, it was not in this position. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So that's kind of what brought the dimensions on for the physical aspects of the world. I'm probably overthinking it. I tend to do that.
Well, you think. First of all, whether it's over or under, but you're thinking, man,
right.
From my perspective, and that's why I like to hang around with you and your joint here. Well, if you do this, well, I'll just keep hanging around. I'll buy the beer and smoke and fry the cheese and crackers and girls.
You're welcome anytime. But the reason why I started getting into those dimensions is because when you start, like I like to think macro and micro too.
Yes.
So when you think about the smaller levels, like down to the nanoparticle, even those are in the physical realm. So that has that extraception property.
They are extraceptively experienced nano.
Right.
But they are with instruments.
Right.
Seen extrospected.
100%, because we can experience the feeling of the table. We know from the instruments that we've devised, or we perceive that from the instruments that we've created.
We've invented them. Humans invent them.
Right. We've basically ascertained that those little tiny things are what creates this solid thing and this solid thing and this solid thing. So that's kind of where I went with that whole tangent.
Yes.
Went down a rabbit hole that doesn't.
Well, no, but you're in a rabbit hole, not in a black hole.
Yeah.
If you allow a distinction. One is more literal than the other. But a black hole means when you're in it, after you get in it, you can't get out of it.
Right.
A rabbit hole, I infer that we can still crawl out of it.
Yeah. So while we were talking, I did pull like the Webster type definitions of some of these words. And I can see kind of where you're going with conception.
Okay. Well, you're going on ahead. So you're using AI here.
This isn't AI.
Google. This is Google. Well, okay. Good deal.
Just to get my mind wrapped around a baseline. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So, like they say, conception generally refers to the formation of an idea or the beginning of a process. So, I mean, that for me, that kind of aligns with what a thought is. So, is that kind of where you were headed with conception?
Well, I am headed, and that's where I'll wind up.
Okay.
Because you notice in the definition of the word conception, they have the
Biological
word
context.
idea,
Oh, yeah.
not the word thought,
Yeah.
but the word idea, and that was going to come up when we get there,
Right.
in this discussion. But the form. Notice it says formation of.
Right. Okay.
Now the word formation there is a significant matter.
Right.
Because formation is the process of forming something.
Right.
And then we begin to talk about, let's talk about forms of physical existence.
Right.
And then I ask you, what are the different forms of physical existence? Whether they're nano-size, i.e. submicroscopic,
Right.
or macroscopic.
Right.
What are some forms of physical existence, leaning on the word formation there?
Right. So you're talking biological, non-biological,
Both.
entities.
Either, both,
Mm-hmm.
different times, whatever.
Yeah.
Forms of existence, physical existence.
Right, forms of physical existence. So, I mean, that was my answer, actually. You've got biological objects that actually have some form of what I would say, I would define as consciousness. I don't know if you would agree with that or not. And I think conscious, that'd be another rabbit hole that I don't want to go down right now.
Well, I'm not going to go down that one, because the word consciousness is even more of a problem than the word form.
Yeah, form, yeah.
So we can get in, we'll get there maybe or maybe not.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about, for example, if you study geometry and go to the mathematics of geometry, and the mathematics of geometry has been invented by humans to do something with the form of physical things. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
And then in geometry we learn, triangle, square, rectangle, circle, and then how to use numbers in all of that.
Yep.
Well, that I'm intentionally using the word form here to drag in another word, shape.
Yeah.
And the word shape is many times when talking about physical things.
Yep.
What is the shape of the physical thing? And then if I ask, what is the shape of this physical thing?
Yeah.
And we look at it and use the common sense language, but the technical language of geometry.
Right.
We'll say this is a rectangle.
Right.
A rectangle.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about dimensions of the shape, i.e. the form.
Yeah.
So notice I'm using the word form and shape synonymously in this talk.
Yeah.
But later I'll drop that.
Yeah, and that also depends on your perception as well. Because from this angle, like if you were looking straight down from the top, it would be considered a rectangle. From this angle, it actually looks kind of like a parallelogram.
It does.
You know what I mean?
Does. Now, see, what you're doing there is making a discernment about how it is perceived by you as a human from different angles.
Yep, the exteroception of that
Yes,
object.
how exteroception, that's what you're going to right there.
Right.
Okay, and that's that's pretty much standard understanding that perspective, standpoint, lens. There are various words that have been employed to account for that, what we're talking about, that different, now lens, perspective, standpoint, point of view.
Right.
I'm using a bunch of words that function about the same way.
Right.
Okay. But that has to do with perception and the shape of things from perception. And so far, we've just limited the word perception as a human experience of introspection, exteroception of physical things, interoception of physiological things, pain and pleasure, and proprietary
Proprioception.
Of body balance.
Yeah.
And so far, that's where we've been, and we're trying to get from to the existence, the names physical and physiological, to mental.
Right.
Now, let me move on that now.
Okay.
With that, but are you aware of the fact that hard sciences, physics, chemistry, and even biology, especially biochemistry, that those are sciences done by scientists from a particular philosophy of science that reduces mental existence out of existence?
Yeah.
You're aware of that?
Yeah. I mean, I never thought of it, but whenever you think of the way it actually operates,
the way those sciences from that particular philosophy of science, I keep saying that.
Yeah.
And the philosophy of science is reductionistic.
Yeah.
It reduces things to its parts.
Yeah.
And the parts make up the whole.
Yeah.
And the whole is not more than the parts. We went through that before, and that part-whole thing is known in philosophy as mereology.
Right. So those sciences all center around perception.
Yes.
Versus thought, which is more conception.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, good deal.
Gotcha.
So far, so good.
Yeah, we're tracking.
All right. Well, I still want to get back, though. See, the word thought.
Yeah.
And the meaning of the word mental.
Mental, yeah.
And the meaning of the word mental and the meaning of the word thought. Do you have those two meanings of those two words referring to the same thing?
I've got thought. Mental, I didn't consider before you came.
Let's go to Google again. Good deal.
Mental is an adjective pertaining to the mind. See, I hate when they do that. How can you define the term using the term?
Well,
the second part kind of does it.
Yeah, okay.
Encompassing cognitive processes like thinking, reasoning, and memory, as well as individuals' psychological and emotional well-being. And thought I actually brought up earlier. Cognitive process and the resulting mental product, such as idea, concept, or opinion that occurs in the mind.
Well, see, the word mental in both of those has shown up in both of those definitions.
Yeah.
Hence, the word mental itself functions systematically ambiguous in this kind of language that's put there by Google in good faith.
Yeah.
All right, but there's a whole bunch of other words in there, like the idea, concept, etc.
Yeah.
That they function systematically ambiguous also, even in the Google who tries to be clear, but they're not.
Yeah, no.
Okay, all right.
Sure.
But so with that use of Google, and my question is, how do you have the meaning of the word thought and the meaning of the word mental connected or disconnected? You went.
Use Google.
You went to Google. Now, after you've gone to Google, what is it? After you do that, what do you come up with about the meaning of the word thought?
Yeah.
And the meaning of the word mental. Are thoughts mental?
This definition says thoughts are resulting from mental production. So basically,
mental production.
So basically, like they're saying that a thought is something that occurs because of mental work. Essentially, is what the way I read it.
That's the way I read it that way too.
Yeah.
A thought is a production of mental work.
Right.
That's the way that you summarize that definition. I would summarize that definition that way. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's the way that would summarize.
I'm gonna start calling thought the fifth dimension.
Well, let's see, the three are length, width, height. They're the three dimensions of physical space.
Yep.
And then time is
your fourth dimension.
Fourth dimension in time. There's four, and now that fifth dimension is kind of open to to occupy.
Right.
You can put stuff in there you want to.
Yeah. So I mean, think about where you're at. I mean, not only does physical items change over time, which is why that fourth dimension is important.
Yes.
But mental states change over time as well. So it might kind of be in parallel to time, but I don't know. It's just that's neither here nor there. That's not relevant.
It is here nor there, but from my perspective, because you brought up the notion of change, which has been implicit in everything we've been saying anyway.
Right.
And hence the reality, the existence of change.
Yeah.
And what is it that doesn't change? I brought that up with you before.
Yeah.
I raised the question, do you know and can you think of anything that doesn't change?
Dark matter.
That's a recent 21st century cosmological responsible answer. All right.
Because even matter changes over time.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
And notice that word matter again. Yes, matter.
Right.
And we're talking when the word matter and the word physical are going to be synonyms.
Yeah.
In this little brief talk right there.
Right.
All right. Well, what I want to drive to with a little bit more momentum is what is it that exists that is mental? And let me propose some answers to that question.
Okay.
And then also, how are those things that exist mentally, how are they experienced?
Right.
And then eventually getting to discerning the meaning of the word mind from the meaning of the word mental.
Right.
Because the Google puts mind and mental together as if they were synonymously related.
Right.
And I'm analyzing them separately.
Right.
Okay, so now then, we've done this before with Jack. And Jack is a word that functions as the name of an animal that we both can have extroceived and have a mental image of. We did this drill before.
Yeah.
And then now that mental image, if you remember, did we decide, or in your opinion, as you consult anything you want, would you consider that mental image of Jack, to be mental or physical?
Yeah, so the image of Jack's is mental. If I'm talking about what I create in my mind.
Now, see, you got it located in your mind.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to call that at your attention because I'm going to drag that out later.
Right.
But you've got it located in something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wherever your mind is.
Yeah.
You know
whatever
what I mean?
it is, where we'll get to that.
In that fifth dimension.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but wherever it is located, that's the location question.
Yeah.
But the existence itself, you'd say, is a mental thing.
Yeah. I think we assume those things exist in, like for me, and maybe this is what you're getting at, you would actually assume that mental image is stored in my brain. I don't assume that. You don't? Okay. Well, because that's kind of what, like if I was to ask any random average person that hasn't put any time into thinking about it, where a thought resides or where a mental image resides, they're going to say the brain.
That's what they're going to say.
And I think the reason for that is because of the experience of folks that have had traumatic brain injury and then lost capability of interacting with folks. That would be my the way I perceive it.
Well, not only people with those conditions that you've described, but scientists will put mental things, and I'm going to use this word, in a black box.
Yeah.
So that, and they put it in a black box because mental things they can't see, hear, smell, touch, or taste.
Right. So it's not in the perception category, so it's not in the sciences.
Well, I didn't say it's not in the
section.
Perception, because I'm going to claim it is in the perception.
Okay.
Because those mental things are also perceived.
Right.
I brought the word perception over from physical and physiological things to mental things.
Right. So
and the mental image is a particular and I even asked you, is it concrete? And it was concrete
Yeah.
shape and color.
Yeah.
Well, so I brought the word intentionally,
Yeah.
bringing the word perception into here now, the experience of mental things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it might not exist in the physical world or in the three dimensions that we experience, but it does have the not distinctions. It does have the characteristics of the things that we perceive in the mental world. So is that how you're tying it to
Shape
perception?
and color, for
Right.
example,
Yeah.
and sound, even hearing bark.
Yep.
Is that what you mean?
100%.
Yes. Well, yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It has those characteristics,
Right.
but they're not. It's not the actual barking or the
Right.
seeing of the dog, etc.
Right. Yeah.
But the word mental is the word that I'm emphasizing that's available for us to use.
Right.
To use in this case to name another kind of existence,
Okay.
like a mental existence of a mental image
Okay.
of a dog,
Yeah.
or of your mother,
Okay.
or of your future on Mars.
Right.
Like Elon Musk, as I can infer, has got a clear mental image in his, I call it the psyche. We'll work on that later.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So drag in my poster child. Yeah, I infer he's got a clear mental image, and boy, he takes that as reality.
Yeah.
And he's going to help us all get there and make our life easier.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's politics and economics and bad science. Okay, with that said, now then, though, so we got the word mental image.
Mm-hmm.
We got the word image with the word mental in front of it to classify it as an image, as a mental thing. Because I do that because we can, in today's world, we also use the word image to mean a picture on the wall.
Right. Yeah. Or on a screen or something.
Or on a screen.
Yeah.
So the word image has to be very carefully analyzed
Right.
philosophically this way, so that we can discern between physical images and mental images, which
Okay.
we've just done.
Right.
And then the name of the experience of that, going back to what is the name of that of the experience of that mental image, and then to concretize it of Jack. What's the name of the experience where the experience of Jack, the physical thing, is extraception?
Yeah.
What's the name of the experience of the mental existence
Thought.
of Jack, but not Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought.
Well, there's the first good of 10.
Yeah.
But if you had to choose between thought and imagination.
Yeah. Imagination.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mention that because I've gone through this a lot, and I've looked for words in ordinary language that are uncommon, that are commonly used, but not in a systematic way.
Right.
So I've practiced using the meaning of the word imagination to name an experience, not extraception,
Right.
not intro or pro,
Yeah.
but of a mental image. Okay, with that done, then there was another feature with Jack, and then I'm going to go into causality a little bit, bring in cause-effect,
Right.
which we were getting into it a little bit with time and space, but let me get directly into cause-effect in this case, because I'm inferring that in your, and I call it psyche, not mine, more later, in your psyche, there's a mental image that you are imagining of Jack,
Mm-hmm.
and then that mental image they're imagining of Jack causes a mental feeling.
Yeah. Emotion. Yeah. Tied to that image. Yeah.
And the mental feeling, though, would be affection. We got word love,
Yeah.
like, all right? But the name of the experience would be emotion.
Right.
It would be an emotional experience,
Mm-hmm.
not an imaginational,
Right.
but they're causally connected, as we would say, in our psyche.
Okay.
Well, if that's okay, then we've been there before.
Yeah.
We've been there before, but what we're added now is that also, from the philosophy of science I come from and work in, an analytical law, is those imagination is a perceptual experience. along with extraception, introspection, and proprio, though the existence different, but it's still a perceptual experience of a mental image, imagination, because it is of a particular thing.
Right. Okay.
And same with mental feelings.
Yeah.
And the emotion is a perceptual experience. All right, so we got so far into perception, meaning that there's several different experiences that fit under the metaphorical category of perception.
Right.
That makes sense so far.
Yeah.
Well, I got two more, and then we can move on if we have time or choose to.
Yeah, I got all night.
Do you?
Yeah.
Boy, hell, I'm free and away from home right now. Okay, well, this is significant, and the more it is clarified, you'll see, I believe it on its face becomes apparent. Now, okay, so now then I want to move from the experience of the mental image of Jack and the mental feelings of that mental image of Jack, and another thing that's mental, and that is, for example, any mental urge to scratch your ear. Did you just have one?
I did. I was off camera though, so thank you for calling.
Well, now then, I can infer and do infer using all of this is under my whole notion of an ontology.
Yeah.
All right, so we can talk about that later. But I infer when I observe your physical behavior, doing stuff with your head right there, and moving your finger. That was body language to me that you're scratching something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an itch in my ear.
Huh?
I had an itch on my ear.
You had an itch on your ear.
That would be the what is it? Proprioception? Well, no, what is it?
No, that would be the introspection of a mental feeling, a body feeling of an itch.
Yeah. Okay.
You're still balanced.
Yeah.
But so balanced that you can. You didn't do that to your ear.
Yeah.
You found your ear.
Okay, I got
so
you.
So your body was in balance.
Right.
So the itching feeling, that would be a body feeling.
Right.
But the scratching would be a physical act.
Yeah.
Right. But it was mentally you had the mental urge to do that.
Yep.
So that mental urge that you just experienced. The name of the emotion for it in common language is conation.
Conation. Okay.
That's the word for it, not connotation. That has to do with meaning.
Right.
But conation is literally meaning the experience of mental urges to do or not to do stuff.
Okay.
To move or not to move.
Right.
So there's perception of that.
Right.
Here we go. Perception is highly complex.
I see.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Well, one more, and then we can resolve this. Because not only did you have a mental urge to scratch your ear to relieve that itching that you were introspecting, you did it.
Yeah.
You just didn't sit here and have an urge to do it.
Right.
You had the mental determination, the will. In other words, the will to scratch.
Yeah.
And you did that.
Yeah.
So there's two things here, mental determination and mental urges that I can infer reasonably you've experienced.
Right.
And then the name of the mental determination, we call that volition.
Okay.
All right, so I've borrowed names from ordinary language to name experiences and to name what exists that is being experienced, and all of those that so far those experiences all fall under the heading. If you're going to draw a chart, perception 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
We could draw a chart.
Yeah.
On that.
The subcategory, basically.
The word categories would be appropriate. So perception is a highly complex human experience.
Right.
But it has one thing in common. all of those different things, the one thing, the physical, the physiological, and the mentals, they all have in common is they are of a particular thing. A particular physical thing.
Right.
A particular mental,
Right.
part of a whole.
Yeah.
Of the whole of everything.
Right. Of
Right.
all of it. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So there's the perception is that
Yeah.
from the analytical philosophy position that I've worked with. Now we haven't gotten to conception yet, but we're still working with perception, and thank you for being the interlocular with me.
Yeah.
With this, because all right, now then, if you're ready to go into conception.
Let's go into conception.
All ready?
Let's go.
Well,
I had it up earlier.
you did, yes. And from my analytical philosophy, it's a good attempt,
Right.
and it works. But there's systematically ambiguous meanings in the first two sentences.
Yeah.
You know, it'd take an hour to analyze all that out. Yeah.
Or it's the beginning of pregnancy.
Well, now then.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's typically whenever
Yes.
whenever I hear the word conception, that's usually what I think about.
the word conception.
Yeah.
Okay.
To
Well,
conceive, you know what I mean?
well, and that goes back to that sexual urge.
Right.
And the body determination and the mental determination to have sexual intercourse,
Yeah.
not with self,
Right.
but with another
Yeah.
opposite sex,
Mm-hmm.
then we do commonly call what happens is conception.
Oh wow. It actually breaks it down into biological
yes.
definition,
Oh, now-
intellectual, creative definition.
Okay, see that
broad
second
usage.
one?
Oh yeah.
Intellectual.
Oh wow. In reflective thinking and linguistics, conception is the capacity to form or understand abstract ideas, mental images, designs, or plans.
Yes.
It acts as a general formulation of beliefs on how someone perceives a particular concept.
Now see, perceives a concept. Well, but number one on that list was biological.
Yeah, number one was biological.
And that's duh. You know, we kind of understand that
Yeah.
on its face.
Yeah.
But that second one, intellectual and creative. And then it has the word ideas. You see all of that in there.
Yeah.
And then it brings in reflective thinking. And now I want to say, before we get the word thinking, notice the word linguistics.
Yeah.
Now then, the linguistics part in there, how do you interpret the meaning of the word linguistics?
So, this is actually something I was going to pause on and kind of talk through with you, because for me, all language is us assigning, sounds to certain phenomena, experiences that we've experienced throughout time. Words aren't, it's not like a tangible item like the table. It's things that we invented, you know what I mean, to represent other things and other experiences that we've encountered.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would describe linguistics as, is the process of naming the things that we've experienced throughout our life, and defining it broadly in a way that both people can understand the concept based off of that sound that you produce.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I hear that. Linguistic is the use of sounds.
Yeah.
Inventing sounds.
And not necessarily sounds, because, you can read it too. I guess you get the mental sound.
Well, how about sights?
Yeah.
Yeah, sights and sounds.
Yep, definition of the exterospective world.
Thank you. That really leads me to come and then take this physical thing and this, and then pointing it and do that.
Yeah.
And then say, do you now, with the language we're using here, if you choose to use it, do you exteriospect the shape and color of that word?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you do that, did you also exteriocept the meaning
Yeah.
of the word?
Yeah, and also a picture popped in my mind of a calendar. You know what I mean?
Well, a picture. Now
Yeah.
there's another word, but that's another word synonymous
It was
with image.
a mental image, yeah.
It's a mental image.
Yeah,
All right. Well, now does that mental image have shape and color?
it does.
Now remember, that's introspection,
Right.
exteriospection, and the imagination
Right.
of things. Those are experiences called perception.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on conception,
Right.
but we got off already
Mm-hmm.
because of that, and an honest interpretation of
Yeah.
that. We got off on to extraception, i.e., the physical
Yeah.
shape and color of that word.
Yep.
All right, not the meaning of the word.
Right. 100%.
And then the meaning of the word, you notice where you went with it,
Mm-hmm.
to the mental.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for me now to introduce a word that is in the literature that just hasn't been popular. And I'm going to put it in a word so that we have not only physical existence, physiological existence, and mental existence, but we have another kind of existence that's involved with the word linguistic, hence with the word conception, in its intellectual
Okay.
sense,
Yeah.
not in its perceptual sense.
Right.
All right, and that word is semiosis.
Semiosis.
So let's see what you do with semiosis.
Hell if I spelled
It's
it right.
S-E-M. Well, I think he'll tell you. It'll get you there.
Yeah. Any activity, conduct, or process that involves signs, including the creation of meaning.
There we go now. See,
Yeah.
the word meaning is appearing there.
That's something I was thinking about too. When you,
Yeah.
as you're pointing at the word,
Yes.
and the image of a calendar pops in my mind.
Mhm.
But say, for instance, a person that doesn't speak English, a Thai person, looking at that same word, it's going to be nothing for them, but squiggles on a sheet.
And by nothing, it means it might not cause
It
a
doesn't.
mental image of anything.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what that would mean, because
Yeah.
it's not like it really doesn't mean anything to them. Just because it's kind of like hieroglyphics. If we don't understand what they say, it doesn't mean they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
So, another rabbit hole.
No, they're.
It's kind of parallel.
Oh, it is, and what? See, I build on what you say,
Mhm.
and what I want to build on here is the use of the meaning of the word meaning,
Yeah.
the meaning of meaning.
Right.
And that's the kind of phraseology you have to get used to when you're doing philosophy of language
Yeah.
or philosophy, of analytical philosophy. Now then, the meaning of the word meaning can be used in various ways. But let me pinpoint the first meaning of the word meaning. And what is if I'd ask you, what is the meaning of the word table?
Yeah.
The word table has, you can exteriocept the shape of it,
Yeah.
of the word, the shape of and the color of the words,
Mm-hmm.
and even the sounds of the words.
Yeah.
That's the extraception of the words.
Right.
And you could even talk about the effect of the word table in your imagination.
Right.
What does the words cause, suggest? And you can say a mental picture of a table or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. But then, is that exhaust for you what the meaning of words are?
Not necessarily. I mean, when you think about context of words, there's. I hate to bring this aspect, but using specifically the example of table.
Yeah.
Some folks,
Yeah.
In the dating world,
Yeah.
some folks talk about what do you bring to the table.
Yes.
And that's more so aimed towards what attributes do you bring to the relationship. You know what I mean? So it's the meaning of the I would say how you would define meaning and things being meaningful is how we associate a common description of how we associate what different things are. So that's kind of where my mind goes when you say that.
Well, it goes there, and I understand that and appreciate that about what you bring to the table and common descriptions. But common descriptions, a description
Right.
of a table, does it entail the use of the meaning of words?
A description of a table, does it entail the use of word? Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You can't describe, you can point at,
Yeah.
but to describe literally means to use words to refer, in this case, to something, in this case, table.
Okay.
The table is black, rectangular shaped, stands about 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's supporting many hardware things, et cetera, et cetera.
Whole lot of electronics over there.
A whole lot. Well, what I'm pointing out, though, is, see, the description, you have to use meaning of words.
Yeah, yeah.
Now we're back to what do we mean by the meaning of a word?
Yeah, yeah.
And the meaning of a word, are you talking about then just a mental image of a table?
Yeah.
Or what? So this I'll get out, this kind of wondering I'm trying to put us through.
Yeah.
About what is the meaning of words?
Right.
And then getting into Fisher, getting into the question of what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And notice how hard it is. It ain't like those other kinds of existence.
Yeah, these are ambiguous concepts.
It's a very ambiguous the word meaning is a very, notice you use the word concept. Yes. All right. Well, also then if we go back to that definition of meaning, the word intellectual was used.
Yeah.
Along with the word linguistics.
Intellectual and linguistics?
When you had the word meaning there.
Oh, when I had the word meaning? Meaning, let's see. It's up here somewhere.
Yeah.
Perception, mental.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had meaning up.
Oh, maybe not. I have a mental image of what was there.
The meaning is the message, purpose, or significance that is intended to be or actually is expressed, indicated, or understood.
Okay, well, that helps a little, not much. But
it has
notice
definition.
the word significance there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go from talking about the existence, the semiosical. I'm going to bring that word in. Semiosical existence of meaning, which is how meanings exist.
Yeah.
And meanings don't exist then mentally.
Right.
Or physiologically or physically. Meanings exist not that way.
Yeah.
They exist semiosically. Now that's not commonly understood.
Okay.
It's not even commonly talked about.
Right.
And the guy that brought this up and made it sufficiently well exposed so that it recognized for me to talk about it is a pragmatist, not John Dewey, but another pragmatist, Sander Peirce. Anyway, semiotics, that's the name of a kind of study, like economics.
Right.
Economics ends with IC, and that's the name of a kind of inquiry. Do you have there's semiosis, but see if you can get semiotics on there. There you go.
Study of signs and symbols and how they create meaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
How they create meaning.
Right.
How signs and symbols create meaning.
And we're the ones. Humanity's what associates meaning to those signs and symbols.
Say again that.
Say it again.
Say what you just said again.
Humanity is the ones that assigns meaning to
Humanity.
those symbols. Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Humans do something. They assign meaning,
Yeah.
in this case, to things, i.e. to words.
And that would be linguistics, right?
No, that's semiotics.
Okay. Oh yeah,
I mean,
semiotics. Okay, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
literally,
That's
strictly.
semiosis.
Linguistics has become the scientific study of how meanings of words are used from the time meanings began and how they're being used geographically on Earth.
Yeah.
That's what kind of linguistics is.
Right.
It's a science.
So interesting rabbit hole to sidestep for just a moment.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar, but whenever they first started toying with AI, and they were, I told you how they came up with AI. They were
Yes.
discussing with it, correcting it, and everything like that. They were, I'm not sure when this occurred. I can't recall the details of it, but there was at some point where they had two separate AIs speaking to each other, and the AIs determined that the words that we use to communicate weren't as efficient as it could be. So it created its own language that only it understood by defining the meanings of the different words in a different way that was shorter. And then the conversation was no longer able to be followed by the humans watching, the interaction. So they shut it down because they were like, we don't even know what they're saying.
Well, I understand what's going on there.
Yeah.
I claim to understand that.
So the AI had its own, what is it, semiotics? No, not semiotics.
The word is pronounced semiotics.
Semiosis.
And semiosis is the social process.
Right.
Involving, you remember you said humanity?
Mm-hmm.
Humans socially together, working together to create something, in this case, the meaning of words.
So technically speaking, and that comes back to the concept of AI being conscious, because two non-human entities basically undertook semiosis in its own way to create a language that did not exist before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it learned to do that because of the historical context of humanity doing it first.
Well, humanity means humans.
Yeah.
Humans, we call that programming.
Right.
Or we call it training nowadays.
Yeah.
Humans do that and they have machines that will accept it and not put up any doubt about it. Just put it in there.
That's literally just a sidebar that kind of blew my mind.
That's good.
That's what the AI, that's what the bots were doing. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you for using the word bots, but I want to point out that this acronym large language.
Yep.
Large language
models.
Model. LLM. That's an acronym for large language model.
Yeah.
Now the word language, you see the word language is in there. And what is the language right now? It's symbols and signs.
Right. It's actually, large language model, powerful artificial intelligence system. Well, yeah, and using numbers and signs. I mean, there was a there was a physicist that was talking about how would we communicate to aliens if aliens were ever to come.
Yeah.
I think this was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said mathematics.
Yeah. Well, he's speaking, I think, authentically as a scientist.
Yeah.
Because science now, both hard and soft, social and however you want to cut the mustard on that one, is dominated by mathematics.
Right.
But it's statistical mathematics, not non-statistical, but it is dominated by mathematics. Numbers and equality signs, etc. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's an advancement. That's got us to where we are now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree. Wow.
Well, but before we terminate this whole thing, because we just made a little dent in the whole notion of what is meaning.
Yeah.
and a way I get at this is if you catch a kid, imagine you're a parent and you got a kitchen and you have this infamous cookie jar.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk in the kitchen and your 5-year-old is getting in and getting cookies out of the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And the mother walks in and said to Johnny,
Yeah.
"What is the meaning of this?"
Yeah.
Notice the word meaning.
Yeah.
Well, do you think, is the meaning of the word meaning there mean the meaning of words, or is there another meaning going on?
It means, what the heck you doing, Johnny?
That's why. Yes. What
What are you thinking?
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
What is your intention?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my intention, Ma, is
To get a cookie.
eat cookies.
Yeah.
So that would be an answer to the question, where the meaning, or the word meaning, would mean in general the intention
Yeah.
of the child. What is the meaning of this? The intention is to steal or to take cookies out of a cookie jar.
Right.
That's an action that they're taking. And then you could say, "Now, Johnny, do you know what the meaning of that is?" Which is another way of saying, "Do you know what the meaning of the intention of taking cookies?"
Yeah.
Well, and Johnny looks at her and say, "Standing in the corner."
Yeah, that's your
The
punishment.
consequence of
Yeah.
your action.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've done quickly the sorting of 5 different meanings of the meaning of the word meaning here to get these other 2 that aren't meanings of words.
Right.
They're meanings of an action or the consequence of actions.
Yeah.
The word meaning has evolved and emerged out of all of that
Yeah.
from the pragmatist point of view. All right, but to begin to culminate the notion of what, see, we started off with perception and
Yep.
conception.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and sticking to the vague way we have the meaning of words recognized,
Mm-hmm.
is that meanings of words are what are intellectually experienced.
Okay.
And the word intellect is brought in then,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word. But it is, and I use the word intellectual instead of intellectual,
Right.
because of the meaning of the word intellectual suggesting something big, smarter than other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the word intellectual, Tional, it functions well enough. It means the experience of meaning of words and numbers.
Right. I never heard the word intellectual before,
Yeah.
but I believe you.
Yeah. Well,
It makes-
imaginational, emotional,
Yeah.
conational.
Yeah.
See, and I'm borrowing from the ordinary language to do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. You've actually, like, when I was in my, this is a sidetrack too, but but when I was in my early to mid 20s, I did a lot of reading and I tried to learn new words every week.
Sure.
You know,
Yes.
and you're still,
Yes.
even with all that experience and
Yes.
time, you're introducing me to new words and new
Well,
concepts,
Well, it's
which I find amazing.
Well, it is, and I have conceived all of it. Now, I'm
Yeah.
going to use the word conceived, to brought into existence something new,
Yeah.
where conception is biological, means bringing something new
Some new life.
into existence.
Right. Mhm.
And so conception is one meaning, is bringing something new in the sense of intellectual,
Yeah.
bringing new meanings,
Right.
not new babies.
Right.
Yeah. So the word conceptual or conception is now, you see, involved with the word, with meaning of words
Yeah.
and numbers.
Right.
And I say that because the most intellectual kind of conceptual experience that humans are having, of course, is the mathematical
Right.
use of numbers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the word, perception, conception, that we've kind of circumvented it and penetrated it,
Yeah,
and we've been doing a bunch of stuff with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think?
So what is
You want
thought?
to go? What?
So what is thought?
What is? Well,
Thought.
now, let's finish with that.
There you go.
All right, because I'm going to assert something here now that we've done all that analytical hard labor.
Right.
That's laborious stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a thought is this your inner and outer voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you say to yourself,
Yeah.
inside you and outside you.
Right.
But the meaning of the word "say" to yourself or your inner voice, you that implies that you're using meanings of words.
Right.
And it implies that you're using meanings of words in some systematic way according to the syntax of your language.
Right.
So it further the consequence is that the thought is the composing of meanings in various forms of sentences.
Mm-hmm.
We did the declarative, interrogative, imperative, and emotive. We did that before.
Yeah.
Those are all sentences, and the word sentence means a composition of meaning of words.
Right.
That's what the sentence is.
Yeah.
It's intentional meaning. So the inner voice is that.
Right.
And that's what I call, that's what your thought is.
Yeah. Or, as I like to call it, the fifth dimension.
Well, let's call it the fifth. That's for you and me. Let's call it the fifth dimension.
Fifth dimension.
Yeah.
Thought is the fifth dimension now.
Yeah. All right. But we have a fairly rigorous way of talking about what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And what it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting conversation, and it answers a lot of questions and raises even more.
Yes, it does.
So,
yes,
because
yes,
with the business that I'm in,
mm-hmm.
And using AI and things to that nature,
mm-hmm.
And we're not going to go into more rabbit holes, but I'm just
mm-hmm.
thinking out loud here. The way AI was trained to speak was through interactions with humans,
mm-hmm.
right? And this kind of brings me back to my channel a little bit, but the way AI was taught to
mm-hmm.
respond, I should say, was through interactions with humans. That's how it was programmed.
Yeah.
The way it was designed to create images
mm-hmm.
was through interactions with human artwork,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So this ties back into the CAD software that I'm working on. So you aware of what CAD is? CAD is how engineers...
Is that an acronym?
It probably is. I'm not even sure. Let's see what the acronym CAD does stand for. I'm sure it is.
Is it CAD or CAT?
CAD.
Oh, CAD.
Computer Aided Design. Okay, that's what it stands for.
All right.
So CAD software is essentially what engineers and what folks use to create
mm-hmm.
three-dimensional objects on a computer, so that they can get plans, so they can get exported files to put into machinery to create
mm-hmm.
three-dimensional objects.
Yeah.
So what I did, and I'm not gonna go too deep into this
mm-hmm.
with you. What I just kind of am reviewing it because it kind of falls in the sequence of what we've been discussing this whole time. But so AI has been trained to interact with humans through interacting with humans. So it's been taught how to respond. It's been programmed how to respond. It's been programmed how to create images by interacting with images created by humans. So I took that thought process and methodology to and applied it to three-dimensional creations of items, and that I tied artificial intelligence into a CAD software, and I had it reverse engineer a bunch of three-dimensional objects. So that's the process that I attached it to. So it's not really we've discussed so many words here. I'm probably gonna it's not really conception, because
what is not conception? What you did or what it did?
What it does. It's not conception.
It's not conception.
The conception actually does come from the human aspect of it.
Comes from humans,
right?
Yeah.
But what I'm creating is a go between my thought and the exterospective creation of that item. Yeah. Because essentially what it is that I'm creating is you use language to describe an object that you have mentally imaged, and then the AI uses physical definitions and mathematics to create that physical object virtually.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's important, and it's such a big deal for me, and I think it's a big deal for humanity, is because imagine if you have some idea of something that you want to create in the physical world, and how would you go about creating that? In old times, you would have to draw out, draw out, physically alter physical elements to generate those things. Versus now we have machinery, and there's something called G code, STL files, and things of that nature, where the machinery can take this, and that's that machine's language. It can take that language and actually produce a physical object. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on.
Well, I understand that, and where I'll put my 2 cents into what you just said is that your thought that you're using in your creative process, using artificial intelligence, hardware, software, I want to say again, it is yourself talking to yourself.
Yeah. The conception part of it is all me.
And it's all you talking to yourself.
Right.
Is that too much to say? No, it's not.
Not at all.
No, but what you're talking to yourself is inside.
Right.
And then you're talking to me about what you've done.
Right.
So you and I are talking outside about that.
Yeah.
But the product that you're producing, that's physical objects.
Yeah.
Out, in various places.
Yeah.
All right. So all I wanted to do is emphasize the question: what is a thought? Well, a thought is in this case, yourself talking to yourself.
Internal dialogue. Yeah.
And you're doing it creatively, not just mimically.
Right.
Not mems. It's semems.
Yeah.
You're creating new meanings.
It's your interior dialogue, not just the dialogue though, because again,
monologue to yourself.
Yeah. Well, it would be considered a monologue since it's to yourself.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not just language though. If you think about humanity in the grand scheme of existence, there was a time when language did not exist.
Well, now let me hit you on that.
And then, I mean, the thought that I'm to complete what I was saying is even before linguistics and the definition of terms and having everything have a meaning and having the ability to communicate that, I still believe there was thought. It just wasn't. It was more pictorial. It was more imagery.
I hear and understand that and accept what you're saying. And I have a way to talk about that particular thing.
Okay.
And because you're going into the big history in which humans have emerged.
Right.
Wherever they merged and however they emerged.
Yeah.
But the underlying assumption is true that when they emerged, they didn't, upon their emerging, they didn't have a linguistic language.
Right.
It emerged later.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'd say that what emerged first
the thought
was
of the words.
The meaning of body language.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking too, because I bet you if I had to bet anything, some extenuating circumstance caused the beings to be like, for me it'd be like, oh shit.
Or shit, or tiger.
Tiger.
Yeah.
Like what? And then they see it and it's like, oh, that's a tiger.
Well, with no words.
Run.
But
and then run.
And then exactly that all means run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it didn't freeze them in their training. But so what I did there was made a distinction between body language,
right,
which is common today, and linguistic language, which is common today.
Yeah.
And it cut the mustard pretty good for that.
Dr. Fisher, I think we're over an hour and a half in. I really think that I might need to create another channel for conversations like this.
Okay. Well, I'm available.
I'll probably put this on the. So I intended to put this on the on my Houston Innovations channel, but we really haven't done a whole lot of discussing on AI, which is mainly what that's about.
Well,
and automation and things of that nature.
What we did today was more and more becoming what I would call analytical philosophy.
Yeah.
Done by somebody who's done it enough to know at least what he or I believe is worthwhile doing.
Right.
And then somebody who has tacit interest in that.
Yeah. And that's why I think that like I said, I'm trying to remain productive. I've got a lot of coals in the fire.
Yes.
But I enjoy every conversation I have with you.
Yeah.
And the amount of depth that we go into the certain things.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't align with any category that I currently have, which is why like if and my dad said I should start a podcast with you anyways.
Your dad?
Yeah, he said.
Did he see that one?
Yeah, he saw the podcast and he loved it. Him and my mom. They said that they really loved the conversation that we had.
Okay. Well, it's a good one, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But let me try on an analogy. What I do with you in that, without your others, with the other entrepreneurs, young guys doing stuff, without them. In my imagination, this is a metaphor.
Yeah.
I'm just one hand slapping in the wind.
Yeah.
It takes all of that.
Yeah.
And then here I go again, body language.
Yeah. I've got multiple parallel interests. I've got peptides, which I've discussed that at length. Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I've gotten into golf, and I've started a golf channel.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that.
And I was just, like I said, I was just thinking, it wouldn't be too heavy of a task for me to, and I've kind of backed away from I had goals for releases and stuff like that. It wouldn't be too heavy a task for me to maybe I could just create a personal one or something like that, and this be something these conversations occur on, or a philosophical channel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
I do, and appreciate that, and especially the fact that we talk, but you got your hard software figured up, so you can get into Google in this case. Yeah. And use Google, use the research stuff.
Right.
Yeah. That's important, I think, to see two guys doing this kind of stuff, but use Google and others.
Right.
Okay, so I'm a happy camper.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for taking the time. You're welcome anytime. And I think, but the reason I was saying that is, like I said, I enjoy these conversations. I don't know how it lines up in your work or what you're working towards.
It's perfectly.
I don't really want to distract you from your work.
You're not.
So, no. but at the end of the day, I would like to maybe, as we continue to interact, we can discuss different topics and things and just start having conversations like this. If you'd be willing.
I am willing. And then another tangential conversation, the one we're having, the topic of what I'm planning to do in my studio.
Okay.
With the podcasting.
Yeah. That
you've helped a lot to rearrange the hardware.
Yeah.
And you contributed that box.
Yeah.
And by the way, do I owe you anything for that box?
Not at all.
Oh, that was a gift kind of thing.
Yeah, don't worry about it, man.
Okay, well, Jason, and we're meeting tomorrow again, so we're developing that.
Okay.
So sometime in the future, maybe you could fit that into one of your categories of thought.
For sure. I'll have time. I'll make some time for you.
Yes.
Probably maybe next week. Tomorrow I'm booked up, and this weekend's a little busy. So.
All right.
But I'm not going to hold the group, the audience, so I'll let you guys go. But thank you again, Dr. Fisher, for coming.
You're
you want to say goodbye?
Bye-bye. Till we meet again. See you later, alligator.
And I will, since this ran so long, I didn't expect for this to go this long. Since this ran so long, I will get into the stuff I discussed at the beginning in another episode and air that separately, because this is already an hour and 40 minutes long. Yeah. So thank you again to Dr. Fisher for coming on. Hope you guys have a good day.
Thank you. Yep.